moving up her cheek. Slowly she opened her eyes and stared up into the face of a horse. The big dull eye of the horse peered down at her with soft eyelashes. The horse was licking her with its tongue. It was spikes in it. Harding blinked. It couldn't be. Confused and dazed. Slowly she opened her eyes and stared at roughness on her cheek. Sarah Harding coughed. Something dripped on her neck. She smelled an odd, sweetish odor, like fermenting African beer. There was a deep, hissing, small head leading to a surprisingly thick neck and a heavy body. She jumped up, scrambling to her knees. "Oh, my God!" Her sudden movement startled the big animal, which spikes in it. Harding blinked. It couldn't be. Confused and dazed, snorted in alarm and moved slowly away. It walked a few steps down the muddy shore and then turned and stared up into the face of a horse. The big dull eye of the horse peered down at her with soft eyelashes. The horse was licking her with its tongue. It was almost pleasant, she thought, almost reassuring. Lying on her back in the mud, with a horse. It wasn't a horse. The head was too narrow. She suddenly saw the snout too tapered, the proportions all wrong. She turned to look and saw that it was a small head leading to a surprisingly thick neck and a heavy body. She jumped up, scrambling to her knees. "Oh, my God!" Her sudden movement startled the big animal. Harding blinked. It couldn't be. Confused and dazed.
Recorded Books Incorporated presents
Animal which snorted in alarm and moved slowly away. It walked a few steps down the muddy shore and then turned back, looking at her reproachfully. But she could see it now. Small head, thick neck, huge lumbering body with a double row of pentagonal plates running along the crest of the back. A dragging tail with spikes in it. Harding blinked. It couldn't be. Eyes and stared up into the face of a horse. The big dull eye of the horse peered down at her with soft eyelashes. The horse was licking her with... Harding blinked. It couldn't be. Confused and dazed. Confused and dazed. Her brain fumbled for the name of this creature, and it came back to her, all the way from childhood. Stegosaurus. It was a goddamn Stegosaurus. In her astonishment, her mind went back to the glaring white hospital room when she had visited Ian Malcolm in his delirium, when he mumbled the names of several dinosaurs. She had always had her suspicions. But even now, confronted by a living stegosaur, her immediate reaction was that it must be some kind of a trick. Sarah squinted at the animal, looking for the seam in the costume, the mechanical joints beneath the skin. But the skin was seamless, and the animal moved in an integrated, organic way. The eyes blinked slowly. Then the Stegosaurus turned away from her, moved to the water's edge, and lapped it with its large, rough tongue. The tongue was dark blue. How could that be? Dark blue from venous blood? Was it cold-blooded? No, this animal moved much too smoothly. It had the assurance and indifference of a warm-blooded creature. Lizards and reptiles always seemed to be paying attention to the temperature of their surroundings. This creature didn't behave that way at all. It stood in the shade and lapped up the cold water, indifferent to it all. She looked down at her shirt, saw the foamy spittle running down from her neck. It had drooled on her. She touched it with her fingers. It was warm. It was warm-blooded, all right. A Stegosaurus. She stared. The Stegosaurus's skin had a pebbled texture, but it was not scaly like a reptile's. It was more like the skin of a rhino, she thought, or of a warthog, except it was entirely hairless, without the bristles of a pig. The Stegosaurus moved slowly. It had a peaceful, rather stupid air. And it probably was stupid, she thought, looking again at the head. The brain case was much smaller than that of a horse, very small for the body weight. She got to her feet and groaned. Her body ached. Every limb and muscle was sore. Her legs trembled. She took a breath. A few yards away, the Stegosaurus paused, glanced at her, taking in her new upright appearance. When she did not move, it became indifferent once again and returned to drinking from the river. "I'll be damned," she said. She looked at her watch. It was 1:30 in the afternoon, the sun still high overhead. She couldn't use the sun to navigate, and the afternoon was very hot. She decided she had better start walking and try and find Malcolm and Thorne. Barefooted, moving stiffly, her muscles aching, she headed into the jungle, away from the river. After walking half an hour, she was very thirsty, but she had trained herself to go without water for long periods in the African savanna. She continued on, indifferent to her own discomfort. As she approached the top of a ridge, she came to a game trail, a wide, muddy track through the jungle. It was easier walking along the trail, and she had been following it for about 15 minutes when she heard an excited yelping from somewhere ahead. It reminded her of dogs, and she proceeded cautiously. Moments later there was a crashing sound in the underbrush, coming from several directions at once, and suddenly a dark green, lizard-like animal about 4 feet high burst through the foliage at terrific speed, shrieked, and leaped over her. She ducked instinctively, and hardly had time to recover before a second animal appeared and raced past her. Within instants, a whole herd of animals was running past her on all sides, yelping in fear, and then the next one brushed against her and knocked her over. She fell in the mud as other animals leaped and crashed around her. A few feet ahead on the trail, she saw a large tree with low-hanging branches. She acted without thinking, jumping to her feet, grabbing the branch, and swinging up. She reached safety just as a new dinosaur, with sharp-clawed feet, rushed through the mud beneath her and chased after the fleeing green creatures. As this animal went away from her, she glimpsed a dark body, 6 feet tall, with reddish stripes like a tiger. Soon after, a second striped animal appeared, then a third, a pack of predators hissing and snarling as they pursued the green dinosaurs. From her years in the field, she found herself automatically counting the animals that rushed past her. By her count, there were 9 striped predators, and that immediately piqued her interest. It made no sense, she thought. As soon as the last of the predators was gone, she dropped down to the ground and hurried to follow them. It occurred to her that it might be foolish to do so, but her curiosity overcame her. She chased the tiger dinosaurs up a hill, but even before she reached the crest, she could tell from the snarls and growls that they had already brought an animal down. At the crest, she looked down on their kill. But it was like no kill she had ever seen in Africa. On the Seronera Plain, a kill site had its own organization, which was quite predictable and, in a way, was almost stately. The biggest predators, lions or hyenas, were closest to the carcass, feeding with their young. Farther out, waiting their turn, were the vultures and marabou storks, and still farther out the jackals and other small scavengers circled warily. After the big predators finished, the smaller animals moved in. Different animals ate different parts of the bodies. The hyenas and vultures ate bones. The jackals nibbled the carcass clean. This was the pattern at any kill, and as a result there was very little squabbling or fighting around the food. But here she saw pandemonium, a feeding frenzy. The fallen animal was thickly covered with striped predators, all furiously ripping the flesh of the carcass, with frequent pauses to snarl and fight with each other. Their fights were openly vicious. One predator bit the adjacent animal, inflicting a deep flank wound. Immediately, several other predators snapped at the same animal, which limped away, hissing and bleeding, badly wounded. Once at the periphery, the wounded animal retaliated by biting the tail of another creature, again causing a serious wound. A young juvenile, about half the size of the others, kept pushing forward, trying to get at a bit of the carcass, but the adults did not make room for it. Instead, they snarled and snapped in fury. The youngster was frequently obliged to hop back nimbly, keeping its distance from the razor-sharp fangs of the grown-ups. Harding saw no infants at all. This was a society of vicious adults. As she watched the big predators, their heads and bodies smeared in blood, she noticed the criss-cross pattern of healed scars on their flanks and necks. These were obviously quick, intelligent animals, yet they fought continually. Was that the way their social organization had evolved? If so, it was a rare event. Animals of many species fought for food, territory, and sex, but these fights most often involved display and ritual aggression. Serious injuries seldom occurred. There were exceptions, of course. When male hippos fought to take over a harem, they often severely wounded other males. But in any case, nothing matched what she saw now. As she watched, the wounded animal at the edge of the kill slunk forward and bit another adult, which snarled and leaped at it, slashing with its long toe claw. In a flash, the injured predator was eviscerated, coils of pale intestine slipping out through a wide gash. The animal fell howling to the ground, and immediately 3 adults turned away from the kill and jumped onto its newly fallen body and began to tear the animal's flesh with rapacious intensity. Harding closed her eyes and turned away. This was a different world, and one she did not understand at all. In a daze, she headed back down the hill, moving quietly, carefully away from the kill. Noise. The Ford Explorer glided quietly forward along the jungle path. They were following a game trail on the ridge above the valley, heading down toward the high hide in the valley below. Thorne drove. He said to Malcolm, "You were saying earlier that you knew why the dinosaurs became extinct." "Well, I'm pretty sure I do," Malcolm said. "The basic situation is simple enough." He shifted in his seat. Dinosaurs arose in the Triassic about 228 million years ago. They proliferated throughout the Jurassic and the Cretaceous periods that followed. They were the dominant life form on this planet for about 150 million years, which is a very long time. "Considering we've been here for only 3 million, Eddie said. "Let's not put on airs," Malcolm said. "Some puny apes have been here for 3 million years. We haven't. Recognizable human beings have only been on this planet for 35,000 years, he said. That's how long it's been since our ancestors painted caves in France and Spain, drawing pictures of game to invoke success in the hunt. 35,000 years. In the history of the Earth, that's nothing at all. We've just arrived." "Okay. And of course, even 35,000 years ago, we were already making species extinct. Cavemen killed so much game that animals became extinct on several continents. There used to be lions and tigers in Europe. There used to be giraffes and rhinos in Los Angeles. Hell, 10,000 years ago, the ancestors of Native Americans hunted the woolly mammoth to extinction. This is nothing new, this human tendency. Ian? Well, it's a fact, although your modern airheads think it's also brand new. Ian, you were talking about dinosaurs." "Right. Dinosaurs. Anyway, during 150 million years on this planet, dinosaurs were so successful that by the Cretaceous there were 21 major groups of them. A few groups, like the Camarasaurs and Fabrosaurs, had died out, but the overwhelming majority of dinosaur groups were still active throughout the Cretaceous. And then, suddenly, about 65 million years ago, every single group became extinct, and only the birds remained. So, the question is, what was that? "I thought you knew," Thorne said. "No, I mean, what was that sound? Did you hear something?" "No," Thorne said. "Stop the car," Malcolm said. Thorne stopped the car and clicked off the engine. They rolled down the windows and felt the still midday heat. There was almost no breeze. They listened for a while. Thorne shrugged. "I don't hear anything. What did you think you—" "Shh," Malcolm said. He cupped his hand to his ear and put his head out the window, listening intently. After a moment he came back in. "I could have sworn I heard an engine." "An engine? You mean an internal combustion engine?" "Right." He pointed to the east. "It sounded like it was coming from over there." They listened again and heard nothing. Thorne shook his head. "I can't imagine a gas engine here, Ian. There's no gas to run one." The radio clicked. "Dr. Malcolm?" It was Arby in the trailer. "Yes, Arby? Who else is here on the island?" "What do you mean?" "Turn on your monitor." Thorne flicked on the dashboard monitor. They saw a view from one of the security cameras. The view looked down into the narrow, steep East Valley. They saw the slope of a hillside, dark beneath the trees. A tree branch blocked much of the frame, but the view was still silent. There was no sign of activity. "What did you see, Arby?" "Just watch." Through the leaves, Thorne saw a flash of khaki, then another. He realized it was a person, half walking, half sliding down the steep jungle slope toward the floor below. Small, compact frame, short, dark hair. "I'll be damned," Malcolm said, smiling. "You know who that is?" "Yes, of course. It's Sarah." "Well, we better go get her." Thorne reached for the radio, pressed the button. "Richard," he said. There was no answer. "Richard, are you reading?" There was no answer. Malcolm sighed. "Great, he's not answering. Probably decided to go for a walk, pursuing his research." "That's what I'm afraid of," Thorne said. "Eddie, unhook the motorcycle and go see what Levine's doing now. Take a Lindstrat with you. We'll go pick up Sarah." Trail. Levine followed the game trail, moving deeper into the darkness of the jungle. The parasaurs were somewhere up ahead, making a lot of noise as they crashed through the ferns and palms on the jungle floor. At least now he understood why they had formed into a single file. There was no other practical way to move through the dense growth of the rainforest. Their vocalizations had never stopped, but Levine noticed they were taking on a different character, more high-pitched, more excited. He hurried forward, pushing past wet palm fronds taller than he was, following the beaten trail. As he listened to the cries of the animals ahead, he also began to notice a distinctive odor, pungent and sweet-sour. He had the feeling the odor was growing stronger. But up ahead, something was happening. There was no doubt about it. The parasaur vocalizations were now clipped, almost barking sounds. He sensed in them an agitated quality, but what could agitate an animal 12 feet high and 30 feet long? His curiosity overwhelmed him. Levine began to run through the jungle, shoving aside palms, leaping over fallen trees. In the foliage ahead he heard a hissing sound, a sort of spattering, and then one of the parasaurs